New unknown pneumonia, much more fatal than COVID-19, is spreading across Kazakhstan. The Chinese embassy in that country issued a statement to its citizens there. The unidentified virus reportedly killed more than 1,700 people this year, over 600 during the month of June. Kazakhstan's health authorities are conducting research but have yet to find the cause. According to health authorities, around 300 people are being diagnosed with pneumonia and hospitalized on a daily basis.
Meow! Huples cat. I have warned before and I'm definitely going to warn again. We're having a pandemic and it's global, whether people want to believe that or not, it's up to them, but there is a pandemic and it's global. And in those sorts of conditions, because the pandemic's not interesting enough for people, any report of a new infection spreads like wildfire. People blow it out of all proportion. People are looking for the second pandemic for some strange reason. I guess it beats dealing with the first pandemic in a reasonable way. We've had this recently with bubonic plague reports in China. Bubonic plague comes and goes on a regular basis. It's quite common in North America in small clusters, and it's usually easily treated early with antibiotics. Now, Kazakhstan is a population of about 17 to 18 million people. They're extremely rich, and they're also extremely a dictatorship, very much so. Probably one of the most like the old Soviets you're going to find. So Kazakhstan is not backward, and they have a lot of cash and they have a lot of infrastructure. They have subways, they have TV programs. They don't have an open democracy, that's for sure. So it's a little bit odd when Chinese embassy released a report, an update to Chinese citizens in Kazakhstan, warning them that there was a new pneumonia that's unknown, that was more serious and more deadly than COVID-19 disease. This caused a bit of an upset. Now the issue is here that a lot of the Chinese people who have got COVID-19 disease and the Chinese claim a new pneumonia have actually been taken out of Kazakhstan and have been treated in China. I for one actually think the Chinese doctors are pretty good at this point at deciding whether they're looking at a new pneumonia or whether they're looking at COVID-19 disease. However, for the last 2 days since the initial flurry of reports, there's been nothing at all official that I can find online, which gives me a pause for concern. But there's a few other issues here that give me cause for concern, and I'd like to discuss them. So this is speculative and this is mostly opinion, because there really isn't any hard data.
In another sign of the political sensitivity around the growing death toll, Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev said he might dismiss the government if the situation does not improve.
Это общая трагедия для нас всех. Поэтому мною принято решение объявить 13 июля днем национального траура по казахстанцам, которые стали жертвами пандемии.
So this is how the Kazakhstan president responded to this, and you can see that he makes certain claims. He is wearing a mask, which all leaders should be wearing and should have been wearing for weeks. What Kazakhstan has done is they've started a second lockdown this week because of COVID-19. Not because of a new pneumonia. They firmly say there isn't one. What is true is that their death rates that they've published, and I'll link an article to their death rates, in no way actually represents the actual death rates from COVID-19, because if you've got 50 or 100,000 cases, you would approximately expect to see 2,000 to 4,000 deaths. So they are underreporting their deaths, and it's causing a bit of flurry. And Free European Radio actually put up a lengthy report on this. I will caution you that that is a CIA-funded organisation that is designed to destabilise America's enemies at home and abroad. So what they're saying is not necessarily true, and I'm not quite sure why the doctor's name is there and why she isn't speaking in Kazakhstanese. She's not, and why her face has been covered up. There's no background about who she is or what she does, so it's kind of an interesting report.
A coffin is removed from a morgue to be handed over to relatives who have spent hours waiting for the body of their loved one. For days, dozens of bereaved and anxious people have been seen waiting outside this building in the Kazakh city of Almaty.
Количество людей связано с тем, что с разных больниц привозят огромное количество усопших.
The authorities say the delays are partly caused by procedures to determine the cause of death. As of July the 9th, official statistics recorded 280 deaths attributed to COVID-19 in Kazakhstan. But they also stated that more than 1,000 deaths were caused by pneumonia in June and July alone. The number of pneumonia cases recorded in June was 4 times the number for last year, according to Kazakhstan's chief medical official. Some doctors have expressed doubts about the data.
Между тем, с коронавирусной инфекцией пайда болду. Көпчі кальпиерлік томография даже недель бойынша, өзгерістер бойынша вирусты пневмонияның өзгерістері көрсетеді. Соның өзгерістеріне сәйкес келеді.
The reported pneumonia outbreak has also caused a media controversy. The Kazakh Health Ministry issued this statement, dismissing as fake news reports in the Chinese media about an unknown form of pneumonia in Kazakhstan more deadly than COVID-19. RFERL's Kazakh service counted the graves at special cemeteries designated for COVID-19 deaths and found they exceed the death figures given by local authorities. In one area, an official told us there are not enough grave diggers to keep up with demand and that they're now charging 3 times as much for their work. As of July the 10th, Kazakhstan had recorded some 54,000 cases of COVID-19, along with an additional 30,000 people in hospital with pneumonia.
So what this is doing, it's saying that the Chinese are saying there is a new novel pneumonia in Kazakhstan that is more infectious and more deadly than COVID-19 disease. The Kazakhstan government is saying, no chance, no there isn't. Radio Free Europe is saying, no there isn't. And the World Health Organization had this to say about it.
10,000 laboratory confirmed cases of COVID-19 have been reported by national authorities over the last 7 days. So there's been a big surge in actual COVID cases itself. But the upward trajectory of COVID-19 cases in the country would suggest that many of these cases are in fact undiagnosed cases of COVID-19. We're looking at the actual testing and the quality of the testing to make sure that there haven't been false negative tests for some of those other pneumonias that have provisionally tested negative, and that is likely to be a major cause of this. That in many ways, many of these pneumonia cases will also be COVID-19, they just have not been diagnosed correctly. But again, that remains to be seen. And we're also working with the authorities there to look at x-rays and review x-rays and look at the patterns of the pneumonias to make sure that they're consistent with COVID-19. There are clusters of atypical pneumonia can occur anywhere in the world at any time, can be caused by diseases as wide-ranging as Legionella, chlamydia, influenza and other things. So there are always other potential causes for clusters of atypical pneumonia, and we always keep an open mind until we have definitive diagnosis.
So when you have Legionella disease currently, that is in clusters and it's located in buildings, generally speaking, because it generally infects via water. So it would be very odd for Legionella to break out all over a country. So it's an interesting thing, and I would advise you to keep an eye on this. Not a speculative eye from channels like mine, but actually have a little look around, wait for national reports to come into the press, have a little look at this. What do I suggest we do? Well, thankfully most of the world is shut down for travel right now, but it only takes one person to come out of Kazakhstan to go to Brazil, to then go to Mexico, to then go to New York City. It only takes one, right? I am still advising you to wear N95s if you have them and surgical masks if you don't in public all the time when you are close to other people. I think that's a sensible precaution with COVID-19 being an airborne droplet infection. If there is a new pneumonia, it should become pretty apparent within a week or two, and it won't be able to be covered up very easily. So that's my advice on this one. Keep an eye on this, keep an eye on what's going on. Be wary of figures, be wary of data. Everybody's fudging numbers downwards with COVID-19 disease, and yeah, don't go on holiday to Kazakhstan this year. And this is an interesting thing about climate change and human response to the planet Earth and how we're using it. In May and June of this year, Kazakhstan's antelope population was decimated by what they think was a bacteria or a virus. They still do not know. In vast numbers, they all died. In vast numbers, and there's some disturbing pictures coming up, so I do warn you about that. But the truth of this is, COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, is an RNA virus. It doesn't take much for an RNA virus to combine with a different type of virus inside the host cell and then become a different strain. And the different strain can have entirely different effects, an entirely different infection, and entirely different death rates. As we go through the beginning stage of this pandemic, this global pandemic, the worst one since 1918, please keep a wary eye on what's going on. Don't relax your guard because everybody around you feels there's no COVID-19 in your community. Keep washing your hands, keep physical distance as much as safe and as much as appropriate, and keep wearing N95s and surgical masks. Keep putting them on properly, wear them properly, don't touch your face, take them off properly, and recycle them, because single use in a pandemic doesn't really exist. We have to reuse our stocks. This could go on for a period of months to years. And I'm sorry, that's not great news, and nobody wants to hear that because everybody wants to go back to normal. But right now, there is no normal. We're in SHTF. We have to accept that. We have to accommodate, and we have to adapt. This includes shaving your face, your hair if you're a man or a woman with a beard, and so you can fit an N95 mask correctly if you're near people, and stop coming out with excuses for not doing that. And for goodness sake, these people out there, and I've had a few on my channel recently, who are denying that this disease even exists and are claiming that masks are dangerous, they really need to be stood on. So I don't like disrespect and rudeness in my comment section, but feel free, if somebody says something you disagree with, to politely and respectfully correct them. I'm not personally going to debunk the masks are dangerous and there is no viral infection disease people, because frankly that's just a bilge and it's obvious to anybody who's got half a brain cell, and I don't really want to engage with people who've obviously got mental illness, and that's why they don't like gay people, that's why they don't like liberals, that's why they don't like Trudeau, that's why they don't like Trump, that's why they don't like black people, that's why they don't believe there's a disease, that's why the New World Order is coming for them and their guns. Like, whatever their internal mental illness is, their paranoid bias, they're transposing that at a time of global pandemic onto the pandemic. And that's just nuts. The pandemic doesn't care about your ideology or your biases. So that's it for me. This was a bit of a quick one. I wanted to do this while I was at work because I'm really concerned about three things here. I'm really concerned that China's being dismissed, and they would know with their citizens of return from Kazakhstan if this is COVID-19 or not, and they're saying it isn't. I'm very concerned that the death rate's underreported in Kazakhstan for very political reasons, and I'm very concerned about the antelope die-off in May and June. We do have a situation with an RNA virus where it can mutate, and hopefully it will, and hopefully it will mutate to be less infectious and less deadly. However, it might mutate to be more infectious and more deadly. We have to keep our individual guards up, no matter what the government says, no matter what the World Health Organization says, no matter what your local health authority says.
We have contained this, I won't say airtight, but pretty close to airtight.
Stay isolated from other people, keep the masks on, keep washing your hands. That's all from me. Remember, in SHTF, tomorrow will always be worse than today, unless you prep. And in a pandemic, prepping means a long haul. Toodles.